And to unpack our discussion topic for today, we are indeed joined by Professor at the Wits School of Governance, former DG of Water Affairs and National Planning Commissioner, Professor Mike Muller. Professor, thank you so much for joining us here on the late edition. Of course, as South Africans, we keep on hearing this, that South Africa is a water-scarce country. As we continue to see water challenges and water problems in this country, where would you say the water challenges began?
Good evening to you, Fly, and to your viewers. You know, I don't think water challenges are anything new to South Africa, and we won't get rid of them anytime shortly. Because unlike electricity, where, you know, we generate it, and that's done by people and organizations, water comes from nature. And the one thing that we can't control is exactly what nature decides to do this year and next year. So we will always have water challenges. And the question is, are we able to deal with them? Are we prepared? Do we know what we need to do? And if we know what we need to do, can we afford to do it? Have we got the right people to do it? And critically, are they talking or are they actually doing? And I think, you know, that's simply what we need. We need people who know what they're doing and are allowed to do the work and given the resources that they need for it. And we will have the challenges, but with the right people and the right action, we can get through them.
And of course, we as the SABC have been highlighting the water challenges that we continue to see in this country. Not so long ago, we had the issues in Hammanskraal. We also saw when it comes to flooding in the Western Cape. You are saying that the issue here should be how do we deal with the challenges we see when it comes to water. Why are we not getting it right if this is a continued challenge we have in this country?
Well, you know, I mean, you use Hammanskraal as an example, and I think it's a very good one because, you know, we've known for ages, and probably 20 years at least, that Hammanskraal had a major problem because the supply to the old Bophuthatswana area was built a couple of kilometers downstream from a wastewater treatment works. And, you know, if you put freshwater plants right downstream from a wastewater works, you better keep that wastewater treatment works working. And the Tshwane municipality didn't do that. And we all know what kind of problems Tshwane municipality has had, you know, coalitions and fights and corruption. And it's not then surprising that the water doesn't work well. The solution to problems like Hammanskraal, quite frankly, is to make sure we get the right kind of governance in the municipalities and let the right kind of people manage the systems. Because what we do have in South Africa, and I'm very pleased to be able to say this, we nowadays have quite a lot of qualified, technically qualified engineers, technicians, scientists who are able to do this work. But in many municipalities, they haven't yet found their way in. And we need to make sure that we use the people we've trained, the people we've got, and let them get on with the job. And I have to say, keep politicians out of the job. Politicians must provide the conditions where we can work as engineers and technicians and administrators. They mustn't try and run the things themselves. I think we're getting to that point where people are realizing that. But there are still holdouts in a number of provinces and a number of municipalities where essentially the politicians are trying to tell people how to run the water, and they're not very good at it, and they quite often are giving the wrong instructions for the wrong reasons.
And Professor, you are saying that we should keep the politicians away from, these water challenges, but at the end of the day, they are responsible, for running our municipalities. And at the same time, it is indeed South Africans who go out of their way to vote for the politicians. What would you say would be the role the municipalities should play in ensuring that clean water is delivered to South Africans?
Well, you know, let's start at the national level. And one of the things that's been really encouraging is that we've seen suddenly, and I think it might not be unrelated to the fact that there's going to be an election next year, we've suddenly seen much greater attention at national level to water matters. And just as an indication of that, you know, the Minister of Water who was appointed a couple of years ago, Senzo Mkhunu, I mean, he's one of the senior members of the ANC government. He was running the Public Service and Administration before. You know, he was a deputy president candidate. He's a senior politician. He was one of the first things he did was he appointed a permanent director general, because the department didn't have a permanent director general for 10 years. And he's got down to work. And if you look at what they've been doing recently, they've been going from town to town, from municipality to municipality, looking at the issues. And much more important, they've been saying in each municipality, based on on the work of their officials, they've been saying, look, you've got these problems. Some of them are going to cost a lot of money and be very difficult, but others you can fix tomorrow. You've got to prioritize what you're doing, and you've got to start fixing things and working properly, and then you will get a move on. And we've seen this happening in a number of towns where there have been crises, and after some intervention, you've seen things improve. And I think it's been very encouraging to see the national now doing its job, not doing the work, but going to the municipalities and clarifying, this is what you need to do if you want to make sure that you have sufficient water in your town for your people. And a lot of the things that they need to do are very simple, but you know, everyone would prefer to spend 100 million rand on a big project. Well, actually, perhaps you need to appoint one person who knows how to run the treatment works. You'll find you don't need to spend 100 million on a new treatment works. Those kind of initiatives are really important.
Are you also saying that, you know, water challenges is actually currently also being used as a political tool for some municipalities and some political parties? And I say this because, you know, in the Free State, there's been, you know, various challenges coming to water. And even when you speak to the residents in the Free State, and they will let you know that, you know, once there's campaigning, all of a sudden residents will have water and there'll be an end to the protest. Do you think that where we are right now, water is being used as a political tool?
Well, you know, I think water has always been a bit of, let's call it a football. It's a bit of a mixed metaphor, but it's always been a bit of a football. Quite often, the nice thing about water is that, you know, those systems keep running. The pressure may go down, the water might turn a little bit brown, but as long as there's something there, people won't complain too much. And that's enabled the politicians to use the resources, the money, to appoint perhaps their friends. And, you know, at a municipal level, we've had a lot of that. The money being used for the wrong purposes, the wrong kind of people appointed. And as a result, slowly but surely, the water supply deteriorates. And then when it gets critical, everyone panics. I'd like to think that at the moment, we're trying to turn the corner in the country and say, you know, municipalities have a number of very important jobs to do. And if they don't do them, we're going to have to find other people to do the work and give other people, other organizations, the money to run those services. And I think that's beginning to concentrate the minds of the politicians a little bit, because they don't want to lose control. And they realize they're going to have to allocate those resources for the purposes required. And they're going to have to use the money properly. And to do that, they're going to have to appoint qualified people and not their friends. And I do hope, and in some places there is evidence that this is happening, I do hope that we see an improvement as a result. But it's going to be a slow process, because there's been a lot of deterioration over the last 10 years. And, you know, if things break down over 10 years, they don't get fixed overnight. So there's a long road ahead to fix things. But at least I believe, and, you know, the department has just put out a huge set of reports going to hundreds of municipalities and saying, these are the problems we've identified. This is where you must start. We'll help you, but you've got to make the start. And I think that process, if it carries on, will be very helpful in the future. So I'm not actually as pessimistic as a lot of people. I think part of the problem, Flo, is that we've had this problem of load shedding, which has, of course, affected water. It's very difficult to run a water supply if your pumps are switched off for 8 hours in 24. And we know that that's been happening. And that's actually aggravated the problems. But I think in another sense, it's also focused people on the need to make these systems work and understand what needs to be done to keep the water flowing.
All right, Professor Muller, thank you so much for your time. That is Professor Mike Muller. He is from the Wits School of Governance. He's also the former DG of Water Affairs and National Planning Commissioner.